I'm Janice Hossteiger. After 3 decades in the marketing business and many years of being an entrepreneur, I've learned a thing or two about marketing. Join me as we talk about marketing, small business, and life in between. Welcome to My Weekly Marketing.
Have you ever run ads and thought, okay, well, people are clicking, but nothing's happening? Or maybe you've been thinking about running ads, but something in your gut says, I'm not ready, and this all seems complicated. Well, today we're getting very practical. I'm talking with Skip Wilson from Draft Advertising, and we're breaking down what business should actually prepare on paper before running ads, how to avoid wasting money on ads that were doomed from the start, and how to turn advertising into something measurable, intentional, and way less stressful than it sometimes is. If ads have ever felt confusing, expensive, or disappointing, well, this episode will save you money and frustration, my friend. So let's get into it. Hey, Skip. Welcome to My Weekly Marketing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Before we get tactical today, why do you think that people really hesitate with spending money on ads? I mean, what's the big misconception that business owners have about running paid ads?
Yeah, I think they think that they must have some huge budget, or because they think of advertising as like a black box that they're going to put money in and never see anything out of. Or they go in guns blazing and those are the ones that don't see anything out of it. So they go in full bore and without direction. So I'd say usually folks fall in one category or the other.
Oh, gotcha. Like either too much or not enough, basically.
Yeah. Right, exactly. They think either advertising is the solution to everything in their business, which it's usually not, or they think it's an absolute, evil that's just sort of an annoying necessity, which it's also not. So,
Right.
They either undervalue it or overvalue it.
So in your experience, what usually breaks first when ads don't work? So is it the platform or the creative or the strategy?
Usually, so it's most important that the creative and the audience match. If you think, I always think of advertising in terms of, a specific message to a specific audience to get them to do something specific. And so one of those two pieces is off. Either you're talking to the wrong people or you're saying the wrong thing. 9 times out of 10, you're saying it's usually the message because
it's not resonating with them.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's not, actually designed to get them to take the proper action. In other words, it's, we'll have sometimes an advertiser that's like, all we're getting is people that we can't finance, for example. And then I look at their message and it's all about how they'll approve anyone and there's no down payments and things. And I'm like, well, your message is designed for the folks that you can't find. It's some sort of audience message mismatch.
Right. So it sounds like maybe strategy is kind of missing a little bit too. If they're jumping into with the wrong message.
Exactly.
I don't know. I always think it starts with strategy, but
Absolutely. Yeah. It really, because you don't know what to say until you think through what am I trying to get them to do and who am I talking to?
Right. Yeah. But that can all be complex. It's hard to put yourself in the shoes of your ideal customer sometimes, really hear things the way that they hear them.
Yeah, and for business owners that are far removed, I'd say 9 times out of 10, we come from the world of our customers for the most part. And so for a lot of industries, you do know how to speak your target customer's language. But if you are in a situation where you're a business owner that's in a different, space than the people that you're, solving problems for, then you shouldn't be nothing should go live, or you shouldn't be doing any advertising without someone in that group taking a look at it. I actually know somebody who designed female athletic wear, but he's an older guy. If you've got a young female athletic wear company and you're an older guy, you need someone, nothing should go live from your perspective. It should always be reviewed from someone in your target audience perspective.
Oh, so true. So what's your story? Was there a point in your career where you realized that ads were something that you really wanted to focus on?
Yeah, I definitely, I think everyone sort of dummies their way into it, that industry. I don't know that anyone wakes up and goes, what I really love is ads. For me, I wanted to be a writer, and the only writing jobs around where I lived were at ad agencies, or at least that I could get. And I was 16 years old. And so I started doing some freelance copywriting work for a few different ad agencies. And then that was right as WordPress was becoming a thing and everyone was getting a website. And so they asked, can you do web design? And because I needed money, I said, sure. And so that's sort of how I got into the industry. And then it just, kept on going from there.
Yeah. I think you're right. Although I would say that I started in advertising as well. And I was like super hyped. I wanted to be like, Ogilvy, somebody.
Yeah, right.
So I have been a lot of people that, I was on the art direction side. So I did meet a lot of people though that kind of felt like, well, I was going to be an artist, but yeah, I'm doing this instead. But I think the thing that fascinated me about advertising is that it's kind of where creativity meets psychology, meets strategy. And that the three kind of come together and produce results that are trackable and tangible. So
I always wanted to, for me, I was always like, I'm a journalist. I'm just doing this right now, but I'm really a journalist, And then I worked as a journalist for about 6 months right after college. And it was one of my first jobs I was actually paid to write about traveling to Argentina and it was a sponsored piece from a company. And I'm like, oh, well, this is just an ad. And so that was when it finally started to click with me that, wait, advertising actually is this beautiful thing that I kind of thought, you really can change people's lives. You can make companies better. You can change, I ended up falling in love with the industry, but it was I would say the first, I don't know, even after that point, honestly, for the first decade of my career, I would always be like, yeah, I'm just doing this right now. And
so what would you say would be like the minimum amount of clarity that somebody needs around their offer before starting to run an ad? So let's say that, I have a new thing that I'm selling. Let's say I'm an accountant and I'm trying to get some clients for tax services. How much clarity would they need to have figured out before they put pen to paper, so to speak?
I always, when you think of advertising, you're thinking about people that are cold, meaning that they don't know who you are, and they may not even know what you do. Now in accounting, they're well aware with what accounting is, but the first step is to sort of put yourself in the mind of your customer and think, where's that first touch point? For an accountant, probably that first touch point for if they're trying to get, let's say they're trying to get B2B accounts, they're a B2B accountant or a business accountant. Probably that first touch point is going to be tax preparation. That's the thing that's things like bookkeeping, payroll, and all those things, those affect most businesses. But the thing that affects everybody is taxes. So, for the one all right, well then tax prep is probably the foot in the door. That's the thing that has the most broad appeal. And then you think, all right, well, what's that first pain point? And, something like just QuickBooks, QuickBooks for a young entrepreneur can be very overwhelming. It's still, I'm not entirely sure. I think I'm using it like 10% of what it can do, which is all I don't want to know more about QuickBooks. I'm done at 10%, but
right.
That's so doing something like sync your, make sure your QuickBooks is properly, synced up. That type of offer is something that is going to appeal to most businesses, virtually every business, and it's a very easy touch point. Doing something like that compared to running just a free consultation or free tax prep or that type of conversation. Nobody woke up this morning going, "Oh, I really want accounting." There is somebody who woke up this morning going, man, I really wish I could just pull a profit and loss report in QuickBooks and it'd be accurate. So you got to sort of think through what's the thing that someone actually wants right now that I could offer that's a very low ask of them. Taking a 30-minute sit down. The reason I'm harping so much on free consultation is because free consultation is one of it doesn't convert very well. It usually gets really bad leads. The free consultation should almost never be the call to action because that's a big ask. It's hard to get, 30 minutes to an hour of someone's time especially if you're business to business. There's nothing more valuable to a business owner than an hour of their time. And so that's actually a huge ask. And whereas having them fill out a form and then you go, yep, it's correct. It's connected now that I've helped you with that. Let's talk more about your other needs. That's much easier. So first step is to think, what's that first touch point? Is it a phone call? Is it, what is that first touch point?
Mm, gotcha. So, is that kind of the question that you think everybody should ask before even starting the ad? Would be just like, or is there another question that they should ask? Not that I'm leading you here, but like maybe go ahead.
Yeah, no, the first thing you should know is like what your actual offer is. Like, what's the thing you're trying to get more people to do? That specific message to a specific audience to get them to do something specific. You need to know what that something specific is before knowing who you're talking to and what to say. And so, yeah, your first step really needs to be knowing, what do I want more of? If you're a roofing company, do you want more phone calls? Do you want more form fills? Do you want more of those things? Because that impacts everything else.
Okay, well that's interesting because I kind of start out with like, who is my ideal customer? But you're right. Sometimes we can back ourselves into a corner that way by saying, I know my customer needs, I need this, this, and this, but you don't really want to do that. Like
Right.
yeah, and I have found myself doing that just from time to time. It's like, everybody's looking for this, everybody's asking me for this, and it's not something I really want to do.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a good point.
Exactly. There are things that one of the things that we almost offered just with my own company was like a deep dive into ad account auditing, basically going in and saying, hey, we'll clean up your ad accounts or get things structured correctly. But then when I actually asked my team, she was like, no, that's the part that I hate doing. And so I was about to go to market with something that is appealing to my target audience. Like that's what they need help with. But it's more of the kind of work that we don't really want to do. And so, yeah, you want to start off with what your dream is first. Like what's in an ideal world, what do I actually want more of? That should be the starting point.
Oh, yeah, good point. So what's the clearest sign that somebody's about to waste money on some ads? Are there some red flags that you see that people are, or maybe you see this like out and about that other people are doing?
I think most of the time when advertising is truly wasted, it's because they've started with picking a platform. For example, like, oh, I'm B2B, so I need to be on LinkedIn. Well, when you start with the platform, you're almost doing it in the exact wrong order. Instead of going, what do I want more of? Then who does that thing? And then what do I say to get them to do that thing? They're going, oh, LinkedIn is where businesses are. So let me do something for LinkedIn. And then what ends up happening is self-serve platforms like LinkedIn or like Meta or like all these do make it very easy now to set up your own campaigns. They don't make it easy to set up necessarily good campaigns, but they do make it easy to go from not having something live to having something live. So once you pick, oh, I'm a business to business place, so let me put something on LinkedIn, they'll then use the sort of self-generating headlines and those types of things, and in an hour have something live, and it's just most likely not going to perform very well because you've taken a guess without really doing the research that LinkedIn's even where you should be, and then you're kind of doing whatever it's recommending is the audience, and then you're sort of letting it dictate what the message is. And it never works well. It's kind of like the old saying that you never want to do, most people are unhappy, in debt, and overweight, at least in America. So you never want to do what most people do because most people are, out of shape, unhappy, and in debt. It's true in advertising too. Those advertising models are trained off of average campaigns. Well, average campaigns break even. So, which is not what you want from a campaign. Right. So you never just want to go with off-the-shelf stuff.
Right. I found that particularly true with Google Ads because I have seen a lot of clients lose their shirts on Google Ads, but by following what Google tells you to do. So I think, and I haven't run LinkedIn ads personally, so I don't know if they're the same. But
it's just as true. It's true.
Is it? Okay.
It's true for all platforms. If you were and it's not like nefarious, in other words, when Google is making those recommendations, it doesn't know what your like target is or what you're really trying to do. What it sees is that, hey, you could get more clicks if you broaden your keywords, so it'll always tell you some version of add keywords, increase your budget, or open your audience, increase your budget, which is always true. I mean, it's almost the same as like, if someone asked, it's like asking, your dentist, like, hey, is there anything else I could do? For my oral health, the answer is always yes. There's always more stuff you could do, right? And
Right.
so Google's always going to be like, hey, you could reach more people by adding in these things or doing this thing. It's not that Google's evil or like trying to waste your money or anything like that. It's that, no, it's going, hey, you want clicks? I can get you a ton of clicks by adding in, something that's totally not relevant to your business.
Right. They're just not good clicks. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Although, they are in business to make money. So I always
For
keep
sure.
that in the back of my mind too. So
Yeah.
So
It's never going to recommend cutting your budget or narrowing your, it's never going to be like, hey, what you should do is pause this campaign. It's
Yeah.
a very self-serving model for sure. I mean, as it should be. If I'm designing the model for Google, I'm going to be doing it with Google in mind, right? I mean, that's whoever built that system, they had that, but that's why you shouldn't just go, full bore. That's like walking onto a car lot and being like, hey, which car should I buy? It's, they're going to keep working you up as high as your budget can go.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to assume that most people right now are turning to AI to do a lot of their writing. I know I have, and I know I've had some very mixed results from it. I will say, what's a good headline for this? And it'll give me like 5 different options. And none of them will resonate, I don't think. And I fight back with AI. So what are your feelings about that? What are your thoughts about AI? And do you have clients that use that? Or do you use it yourself? You probably do.
I do, yeah. I absolutely do, especially if I'm stuck. I mean, there are times where I'm like, I don't know how this. I don't write a lot of ads anymore, which is kind of funny because that's how I got into the industry. But now I do very little copywriting, unless I'm particularly moved or something. We've got a team that's much better at that than I am. I use it mostly now to reply to emails. So, but I definitely do it when I'm like, I don't know how to even reply to this person.
Yeah.
Then I cheat and I use ChatGPT. But to your point, it does, when I have used it for campaigns, I've noticed that it does a better job than, like, if you're a solopreneur or let's say, you're a roofing company or an accountant that has no clue what you're doing. I do think that ChatGPT will probably do a better job than that person at writing the ads. One of the things that I would recommend doing is asking for way more suggestions. If you need 5 headlines, ask for 20. And if you get, and out of 20, there will be like 8 or 9 passable ones. Mm-hmm. I do think it's better than a lot of folks that don't know what they're doing will come up with. What I actually recommend is starting yourself, like if you are a roofer, accountant or whatever, write out your version of it and then have ChatGPT clean it up and make it better. Usually produces better results.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't compare to having like actual professionals pull like real campaigns yet. I mean, I think that someday it might. I have also learned tricks, like you mentioned David Ogilvy. I will actually ask ChatGPT something like, what would can you take these headlines and make them like David Ogilvy worthy? And it will actually do a decent job of some of that. So telling it to write in a particular voice can be helpful sometimes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, even I know I've given it writing samples of my own.
Yeah.
And it does okay. I wouldn't say I always have to clean it up, which is to be expected and good because it does some things I think I have no idea where it came from. But also I found that the more information you give it, the better off your results are going to be. So you really honing in on that audience, what their problems are, how they're feeling at that moment, what the platform is, all the things. The more information it has, the better it does. But just curious, because people are going to use it. I mean,
and Google now has Google now has, I don't know if you've played around with this yet, but you can toggle on the Gemini feature and the AI expansion, which is helpful and cool. It does basically the headlines what they do in like broad matching keywords, where it'll take your headlines and then it'll just sort of make up new ones to match the search, which can be effective. Like we've had some good results with it. We have also had it take it was a pest control company, and it added 20, available 24/7, which is actually not true for this company, and worked that headline in. And it's doing that because it knows, hey, pest control, this is a headline that works well in pest control, which is great, but it's not quite smart enough yet to go, oh, wait, but this company's not available 24/7. And so we've had interesting instances like that happen before as well. So
Yeah.
I like the Google AI expansion in theory, but you have to watch the campaigns.
Yeah, I don't think I'd let it do it on its own. But,
No.
I would say like for a Google ad, I think especially for a search ad, I think that would be particularly helpful because you try to do a lot in a very short number of characters,
Right.
trying to get a keyword in there and you're trying to get something and it has to be within this, limited amount of space. So
Exactly.
interesting. Yeah. So how can someone pressure test their message before putting money behind it?
One of the easiest things is to take it to people that are outside of your industry and just be like, hey, give this a read. Does this make sense? Ideally, they're in your target audience. But I mean, even if it's just having somebody at a coffee shop, just have the barista read your stuff and be like, and give feedback. That can be incredibly helpful because especially if you are like the owner operator writing your own ads, you're probably going to be using jargon and things that don't really mean anything to anyone else. We have a lot of gym and healthcare clients, and one of the things they love running, and we've got most of them to stop doing it, is like, no join fee or no origination fee, those types of things. Well, join fee and origination fee, that's kind of an inside, like we can all guess what that probably means. But that's a lot less compelling than, $0 down or something like that, or first month free. First month free, everybody knows exactly what that means. No join fee, it's like, well, I still have no clue how much it's going to cost me to come into this gym, right? And so some of those terms, it's things that you just don't want the audience. It's not very compelling if the audience doesn't actually know what it means. And so have somebody outside of your industry read it. I will say that's also a good use of ChatGPT too. I mean, I do think that if you're not using, and I use ChatGPT generically, whether it's Claude or Gemini, any AI tool, I do think it's actually a good idea to get the ChatGPT's advice of like, hey, what do you think of these before running a lot? If not, you're not using the tools that you can in today's world. So take advantage of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that I found really helpful is that, early on when I started using ChatGPT, I loved everything I did. Like, oh, you're doing a great job,
Right.
So I started getting suspicious about this. And so then I had to tell it, it's like, everything I write, I want you to be, my toughest critic here. I want you to, bring up anything that you think is not, good. And it will do that. It still holds back a little bit, I think, but
Yeah.
that is a good thing I think you have to tell it that to do that, because it will not just be tough on you. It will just affirm you, which is part of its popularity, I think. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, it does. It definitely does have like, the family member effect of like, oh, that's so wonderful and so great. So yeah, that's actually a lot of times where I will use specifically what would David Ogilvy say of these headlines? What would David Ogilvy say of this? Because, he was famously a fairly staunch critic of things. So, then it'll give very strict feedback.
Yeah, right. I like that. I might use that one too.
Yeah.
How does somebody actually determine where they should be spending their ad money? Do they look at their audience first, or what do you think?
Yeah, once you've decided your audience and you know what you're trying to get them to do, once you know those two pieces, then picking the platform is relatively easy. I mean, depending on your ad budget, you're going to be limited likely to, the easiest and best place for most businesses to start is online, is some form of online advertising. Now, if you are in a particularly great location or you have something geo-based, then something like signage and those types of things can come earlier. But for most people, you're going to be thinking of an online platform. And so if you know that your target audience is fairly broad, say that you're a roofing company and you just want, well, hold off on roofing companies. Let's say that you are an accountant and you just want tax prep for the general population, then I would recommend something like Meta or Facebook and Instagram together. That's a good place to start because you don't need a lot of targeting, and you're usually just trying to get them to like give you their contact information so you can reach out to them. And Meta is probably the best place to do that. If you are something like a roofing company where you have where it's mostly needs based, like nobody is wondering like, gee, should I, there are some times where you're like in that space of like, should I get a metal roof or something like that? But for the most time, you either need a roof or you don't need a roof.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
If you're in that type of business, I would always start with search because, you want to reach people in the moment. And so you're going to be starting most of the time with Google. Those two platforms, Meta and Google, those are the best places I think to really begin for most businesses. I get asked questions like about TikTok and LinkedIn if it's B2B. I get asked questions about those platforms a lot. They're great platforms, but TikTok doesn't have a great targeting right now. I think eventually it will. And then there's other platforms like Amazon ads and direct mail, broadcast, those things that are great. Just usually they require a decent size budget, or using a company like us, shameless plug, where you don't need a large budget, but to gain access to those things. So those things,
right.
You probably have an established thing.
So I love doing podcasts, but one of the few things that I don't love so much about podcasting is that sometimes tech fails. And that was unfortunately the case with my last few minutes with Skip. And it's too bad because he had more really good things to share. Regardless, if you'd like to learn more about Skip, you can find him at draftadvertising.com. I'll put the link in the show notes as well. For more information about anything we talked about today, visit myweeklymarketing.com/147. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.